To scale faster and smarter under these circumstances, you may need more than just capital. And that's where things like partnerships, creative financing strategy will come in. So whether we're talking about teaming up with another investor or tapping into newer models like crowdfunding, the most important thing I want you to think about here is how to build deals that align with incentives and will help reduce your risk, right? So the first thing we're going to talk about is joint ventures. This is where two or more investors will join force together to share capital and expertise and or labor, right? It's really up to you how you structure that joint venture. So for example, a great joint venture would be somebody like me who has a great job. I may have some capital, but I do not have the time to oversee the day-to-day of a business. So I would join business with somebody who is maybe a property manager or a contractor, and they are doing the day-to-day work, and I'm bringing in the money. This works very well because one person is bringing the money, the other person is bringing the time and the know-how. However, you guys need clear legal agreements in order to make it work. The second thing to think about here is real estate syndication. This is for people who, to me, you need to have quite a bit of money in order to successfully do real estate syndication to where it makes sense. So this is for the girlies who are like, I want passive income, I don't want to do anything. This is a passive investors pool money under a general partnership or sponsor who manages the deal. So let's say if I wanted to build a syndication, I would then be networking with all of these different investors, pull all of their money in, and I do all of the work. And at the end of whatever time frame we say, they will get a certain percentage, right? Usually it's anywhere from like 8 to 10%, but it really depends on the syndication. This is often used for large, really big project, commercial projects, mixed use project. I think recently a friend of mine invested in a syndication where the builder was trying to build an apartment complex right next to a shopping mall. So that is a pretty lucrative deal, but it requires a lot of cash in order to make it happen. So I think she may be investing like a few $1,000s, and every quarter she gets a check for whatever percentage she invested for. This will offer access to bigger deals without you having to deal with the day-to-day, right? So she's getting like her 8 to 10% every quarter, but she doesn't have to deal with the day-to-day. In my opinion, this works well for people with a lot of money because you can put it in the stock market or you can put it in this deal. But the thing about syndications is that with a little bit more effort, you could make so much more than the 8 to 10 to sometimes 15% you get, right? 15% is being very generous. What I have seen has been around the 8 to 10%. The third one is seller financing. This is one of those strategies that we continue to talk about it as if it's popular, but nowadays it's a little bit more challenging to get these seller financing deals. They were big back after the crash because most of these properties really couldn't get funding from a bank. So a lot of sellers who own their properties but didn't really take care of it will do a seller financing deal with somebody who can make all the fixes and then refinance it through the bank because they didn't want to deal. These opportunities are still there, but they are rare. When you seller financing, the seller will carry the note, they become the bank. And this allows the buyer to still pay an installment like they would pay for any other home. It reduces your reliance on traditional banks and it offers more flexible terms. And this is often useful when you're buying a property that wouldn't qualify for conventional loan. My parents live in a college town. That's the college town I grew up in. And it's full of slumlords. Sorry. It's the truth. It's a lot of owners who, for whatever reason, because sometimes when you hold the property for a long time, you're just like, I'm ready to get rid of it. I don't want to do a penny's worth of work to fix it up. So there are lots of properties that need not just cosmetic repairs. We're talking the plumbing needs to be rooted out and completely fixed. The HVAC. My parents recently bought property from one of those landlords. And come to find out, even though they went through an inspection, they gave them the thumbs up on the HVAC. Come to find out, the HVAC was completely clogged and needed to be replaced fully. It was underground, so clogged up. The filter hadn't been changed in years. So my parents had to build a brand new HVAC system up top. So when you're working with these types of landlords, these seller financing deals would be possible, but what you're buying is also a lot of headache. However, my parents on their own were able to completely do all of this work. Well, except for the HVAC and the plumbing, right? That cost them almost $17,000, but they saved almost double that by doing the rest of it. The fourth strategy is hard money and private lending. These are often short-term loans or asset-based loans that are used primarily for flipping and borrowing deals, right? So with hard money loans, you're not using this to buy your property that you would live in. You are using this as your short-term strategy to buy your property, fix it up. So for example, this property that my parents bought that was completely, if it was in worse off conditions, which I've seen, and the bank is like, we will not refinance this property, what my parents could have done is go to a hard money lender, make a case, write a proposal. This is how much it's going to cost us to fix this property. And once it's fixed, this is how much the property will be worth. The hard money lender will then give them the money. They will do all of the fixes. And at that point, my parents will either flip it by reselling it, or they will bury it by putting renters in that property. And then they will refinance that property to get a proper loan and then if they're selling it, of course, they will get whatever the spread is between the cost to flip the property, the initial cost to buy, and whatever other legal fees to sell it. If they bury it, they will either get the money back, or they will get the money back from the spread of buying the property, fixing the property, etc. Or they won't even take any money. Now they just can live off of the rental income that's coming in if it's a burr. Approval for these types of loans or projects is really based on the deal's value. It's not really based on your credit. That's why a lot of people love hard money lending, but I promise you there's a lot of nuance, right? To get the hard money loan, they're not looking at your credit, but you still need to do your due diligence, because once that property is nicely remodeled, you need to refinance it. If you're thinking about selling it, it's no problem. But if your point is to refinance, your credit score will still matter. It's an important thing to realize, though, hard money lending offers really high interest rates. You can get to close the deal faster, but your interest rate is a lot higher. Like some of these properties before, when regular interest rates would be like $2 or $3, hard money loan interest rate was anywhere from 10 to 15%. That's high. But it's worth it for some of these burr deals where you can buy it and fix it up. It's not 10 to 15% for 30 years. It's 10 to 15% for maybe a year. Most of these hard money loans are usually about a year. The fifth creative finance option is lease options and substitute deals. I'm telling you this as a comprehensive strategy, but I'm going to be honest. I personally don't know a lot of people post-pandemic who have done lease option or subject twos. Now, I have to say this. I've also been living in really big cities. If you live in a smaller rural area, these opportunities are probably more available to you. But there's a big difference between your property value in the city and in rural areas, but that's for another video. This is where you can take control of a property with little money down via a lease purchase agreement or by taking over an existing mortgage. So for a lease option, you would, for example, I have a house I'm renting. We would do some sort of agreement, hopefully with a lawyer. And it's going to be like, hey, if you pay your lease for 15 years, you can buy it for X amount. But if this and this doesn't happen, all of those years of renting do not count. There are many different ways to structure this lease option. This is very common for people who may not have the best credit score. Like, so for example, people who don't have legal status, may not have paperwork, or people who may not have credit score for some reason are most likely going to subject themselves to a type of lease option. This is where you may subject yourself to being scammed. So this is one that I would only do with a lawyer and Like you have to do a lot of due diligence, right? We have enough option, and us as women in corporate America, with options, with money, with funds, with good credit scores, this may not be an option we will move into, but this could be an option we'll extend to other people, right? And subject to deals is when you take over an existing mortgage that already has a particular type of interest and you assume that mortgage, right? Now, circumstances under which you would do one or the other are really up to you. I don't see them coming by as much as they used to before, but it's an option that you can research and see if it works for you. And these tend to be ideal in slow markets with motivated sellers. And unfortunately, today in 2025, it's a hot market. Even right now with high interest rates, houses are still flying on the market. Not as much as they did post-pandemic, but they're still moving faster than they did between 2008 and 2018. The final strategy is another strategy that I'm going to bring up to you as a strategy, but let's be very honest, this is less likely a way that you as a power maven will buy your property unless it's a large deal. Crowdfunding for real estate. There are many online platforms that will let you invest with as little as a few $1,000s. So this is great for like diversification or learning your ropes passively. They are somewhat similar to syndication with their caveat, right? You do have to watch out for platform fees, deal terms, and honestly, you have no control with crowdfunding. And you also may not have all the tools and the resources to do the right type of research with crowdfunding. So the last two strategies are strategies that I want you to be aware of as things that are possible once you become a little bit more experienced. You see, creative financing gives you more entry points, but with more options also comes more responsibility, and honestly, you need to be more careful about your risk, right? You really need to understand the terms and that all of these different creative strategies align with what you want to do. By expanding your funding toolbox, you open doors that traditional financing might keep close to you, and I want you to do so, keeping in mind a few things. So here are some important things that I will caution you. Scaling is not for everyone, and that's okay. In real estate and in business, knowing when to stop is just as powerful as knowing when to grow. More properties often will mean more complexity and more responsibilities. Your finances, your energy, it can and it will stretch your time, your finances, and most importantly, your energy. And I'm speaking from experience. You might find that owning two well-performing properties bring you more peace, more profit and freedom than managing 10. Recently, David Green, you should research him, has come out and he's talked about the reality of real estate investing. These are people I grew up idolizing, right? David Green and the other one who worked the rental property. I'll try to leave a link here on both of their names. They started together doing the Bigger Pocket podcast. Brendan Turner, and both of them today will say the same thing. You see, the thing about social media, it exists to get us ginned up and excited about things so that somebody else can make money off of us. There's nothing wrong with it, right? Because sometimes you get to learn a lot about yourself. You get to learn about your own growth. But real estate, for all of the benefits it brings us, also has a cost. And if there's one thing we need to caution against overscaling or scaling too much, is real estate. Your goal shouldn't be to hoard assets. It should be to build a life and a business you can actually sustain. And it should bring you some degree of joy and financial contentment. Don't scale because you feel pressure or you think that it's going to be so great for me to say, I own 100 doors. No, because trust me, in real estate, you are better off owning one property for $10 million than 100 properties for $2 million. Scale because it serves your mission.
Before you go, follow me on my other platforms. On my business channel for career, business, and money strategies to build your corporate exit strategy. On my lifestyle and travel vlog for the real life behind the strategy. And on my podcast, From Corporate to CEO, for daily side business tips and motivation. But the real work happens in the community. This is where we support each other and build this together. Same values, same season, and same direction. I'll see you there.